I believe that Thor Ragnarok was Marvel's plan from the beginning, bringing together the most unique and surprising duo to create a strange but satisfying story that develops both characters and impacts the MCU in a surreal way, and boy did they pull it off. Not only creating a pairing that is still remembered years after its release, but setting a very colourful and outrageous style for the main protagonist that Marvel has been struggling with since his debut in 2011.
Tonally, I think is just a perfect mix for where the character and story needed to go. You know, different costumes, different weapons, different cast or characters to work off give you a different energy.
The development of the film is interesting. It introduces a brand new director to the franchise, Taika Waititi, who I think was a decent yet wild approach, especially regarding the type of film this is. Ragnarok literally means the ending of all things, and dropping a director typically known for his comedic-based films into it was just surprising to me. Marvel were really at a high point during Phase 3. Their previous film Spider-Man Homecoming managed to gross over $880 million. Similarly, Thor Ragnarok grossed $854 million with a $170 million budget. So they were absolutely rolling in it. Considering that budget, the visuals are gorgeous. It's what really drew me to this film, and it's what Thor movies should be like. Colourful and exciting. It genuinely feels like it drops us into the mythology that Thor is based upon and brings it to life. CGI models like Surtur, Hulk, Korg and Fenrir are really well detailed, and this is the best we've seen Hulk in action. The fight between him and Surtur was a spectacle. It felt like it was ripped straight from a comic book. Not to mention Thor's powers being spectacular and utilized in ways we've never seen before. His scene on the Rainbow Bridge, accompanied by Led Zeppelin, is a moment I'll never forget. I've already hinted at this, but the way this film interprets Thor is something special. It really gets who MCU's Thor should be. He comes across as stupidly humorous here, and I like to think he puts this on as a sort of defense mechanism due to the amount of grief he's been through. If you look more deeply into his depiction here, he's becoming a lot more vulnerable and selfless, which is a massive change from his first appearance. It develops his character in an amazing way, and I praise this movie for that.
I'm not as strong as you.
No. You're stronger.
The Hulk/Bruce Banner is an integral part of the story. It's a bit convenient that he's suddenly back in the presence of Thor, but who cares, I guess. His involvement is seriously cool, and the way they've somehow developed a character like him is really interesting. Now having the ability to talk in full sentences.
Big monster!
Although he's super vocal now, he does act like a toddler, and that's where it got a lot of laughs from me. Hulk is supposed to have the mental age of a 5-year-old at this point, so it makes sense, and his interaction with Thor just makes it even more hilarious. Loki turns up again, capping off the twist that he was ruling Asgard at the end of Thor: The Dark World. His role in this film does serve him justice though. He becomes more of an ally to Thor here as they take on their sister. He's viewed as more playful and timid compared to his last appearance, and while that does help develop his character, it does feel as though he was nerfed and left to the sidelines.
I have been falling for 30 minutes!
Talking of their sister, Hela makes her debut portrayed by Cate Blanchett, and I really found this character intimidating. Maybe the humor dialed it down a bit, but she was still just as scary and dominating.
What were you the god of again?
She pretty much steamrolls Thor, destroying his hammer and slicing his eye. Some backstory on Hela is that she's the goddess of death and the firstborn of Odin. Her and Odin were powerful allies in the past, but after she helped Odin to take the 9 realms, he realized her desire for violence was too much, even exceeding his own, later banishing her to Hell, a pocket dimension in which she was freed once Odin died. The way her thorn crown and daggers seem to materialize is animated in an interesting way. She's incredibly strong, crushing Thor's hammer, and she's agile. She also seems to have the power of unlimited daggers. I found that quite fun to watch as she just tears through Asgard's army. Of course, we're going to talk about him. The Grandmaster, played by Jeff Goldblum, is a quirky addition to the movie and holds quite the intimidating personality. The Grandmaster in the comics is a manipulative and powerful elder of the universe. He can be quite childish and competitive, and we do see that portrayed here as he cheats during one of the contests. At the same time, he comes across as a very flamboyant and funny character. I love Goldblum anyway, but this is him at his best, honestly. Lastly, I'm just going to have to fly past these guys, but Korg and Valkyrie were some interesting additions to the film. Especially Korg. Everything he does is just hilarious.
Piss off, ghost!
Valkyrie here is a stoic and ruthless warrior with a dark background, and although she may seem like a boring character at first, her addition to the group is what the film needed. This movie is full of wonderful connections to the wider universe. Things like the play on Thor the Dark World and Doctor Strange's cameo are incredible ways of placing this movie into the timeline of the MCU. There's some super deep connections within this film that I found way more fascinating though, such as Surtur, who in the comics is a powerful fire demon who rules Muspelheim, which is a realm we actually saw in the previous movie. I loved his inclusion though, it felt like we were really diving into the mythology surrounding Thor. Another Easter egg is found carved into the Grandmaster's palace. This massive sculpture includes previous champions of the contest, and from what we can see, it seems Man-Thing was a champion at one point. We can also see Beta Ray Bill, whose character in the comics is a powerful horse-headed alien worthy of lifting Thor's hammer, and who also sports his own weapon Stormbreaker, which is introduced in Avengers Infinity War. The Tesseract makes another appearance as we see Loki glance at it once he's in Odin's vault, later revealing that he did in fact steal it, and this set up the prologue for Infinity War perfectly. Lastly, Stan Lee makes one hell of an appearance as Thor's hairdresser.
Now don't you move. My hands aren't as steady as they used to be.
Now, this film does have its flaws, and coming back to it years later, it definitely feels as though it was favouring humour over its serious or important moments. And I've talked about this in my review for Guardians Volume 2. It seems as though this was in an era of Marvel where they were really pandering to a younger audience, or they believed that Marvel fans were only in it for the humour, and while the humour is what makes these movies memorable, it definitely doesn't need to cut into the highly emotional scenes, and we get that a lot in this movie. Don't get me wrong, I love the humour here, I think it's one of the movie's best attributes. However, the destruction of Asgard would have felt so much more compelling and meaningful if there were no jokes to undercut it. There's many examples across this film, like Bruce sacrificing his human form for Asgard, willing to possibly become Hulk for forever, and it's ruined with a faceplant for a quick laugh. But I think that Asgard's destruction is the worst Marvel bathos I've come across. So with that being said, this film does eat up a lot of potentially tragic moments, and that does annoy me, but there are times where the humour was brilliantly executed and perfectly placed. I think this movie walks on a tightrope when it comes to the Marvel fanbase. People want to discredit it because of its hugely impacting flaws, however, it brings a lot of nuance to a character so mistreated in the past. And it does what Marvel fans have been craving for since the beginning of this franchise, which is placing two lovable characters together and seeing what they can do. This film feels like a comic book, not only in its tone, but the way some would interconnect in fascinating ways.